Leave my people alone. That's right, that's right. Now, dear brothers and sisters, again, this is the African World Report, and our great queen sister gonna say some. Listen, she has the floor. That's just bottom line. Brother Carney is a very powerful brother. Also, a lot of great things coming in from the Congo regarding his work that he's doing. And we're so happy for him to be here and to be in the midst of these great African people. You're thoroughly blessed, brother. You are being blessed. Thank you, brother. The African World Report is that, number one, looking at Africa at our center. The African Union is under siege. It's under massive attack. And basically, they have buckled to the point where these African leaders are on their knees. That's what's going on right now. They are on their knees. Gaddafi gave us an opportunity. President Gaddafi gave us an opportunity to realize what Martin Delany said we must do in the 19th century, which is to build an African nationality in Africa. This is after he waged a war. This is a medical doctor. He waged a war during the American Civil War. He fought. As a matter of fact, he had a saying that if any white man come into my house, I blow his head out. Can't come into my house and say, this is the 19th century, a medical doctor. He's the one begin to lay the foundation for comedic science and history. I mean, this brother was outstanding, okay? But then after the Reconstruction, and then you have massive killing and brutality, the unleashing of what they call the white supremacy, KKK and black folks, he pointed to Africa and said, we must build an African nationality. In Africa, he was very clear. Bishop McNeil Turner was on board. Others were on board in terms of Reverend Highland Garnet, and others said, this must be done. And what really helped us, sister, is the work that you did with Emperor Menelik when defeated the Italians. Give Emperor Menelik some love. 1885. 1885. 1885, when these Europeans came together and said, we're going to control, we're going to brutalize, we're going to enslave the whole continent, as we have done with these Africans that they took out of Africa. We're going to do the same thing, savagely enslave them on the continent also. That's basically was the decision, 1885. Just like we have turned the Africans here into chattels in the Americas, we're going to make the whole continent a chattel animals. That was the plan. That brother Joe Beasley, come in, brother Joe Beasley, our great brother Joe Beasley. Give him some love. Give him some love. And so what happened is, 10 years later, here we are. And by the way, that's right, 1895, Emperor Menelik was told by Africans in the diaspora, that the enemies of Africa were dividing Africa up. You hear what I just said? A great African from Haiti, a merchant marine. Do you know who I'm talking about, brother? That's right. Told Emperor Menelik that the whole continent were being divided and he must get ready. That's what happened. The diaspora again, making sure the Africans are ready on the continent. What Menelik did, and this is something we have to study the models in history. Menelik now begin to play off the Russians against the British against the French, and say, each one of you give me some guns. Give me some guns. Give me some guns. Give me some more bullets. Give me some more bullets. And he was preparing for the great day. 1895 came, Italians rode in. We're going to take all of Ethiopia. Thus saith the Pope, the same Pope, of course, who sent us into slavery, right? The same one. And they ran up against Emperor Menelik and they were smashed. The whole European world were taken aback. The first time such a major beat down by African people. And Africans in the U.S. rose up from our chattel, We thought this was the end of us after the KKK began to wipe us out. We thought that was the end. We were jumping on ships heading to Africa and to Haiti until Menelik defeated the Italians. And that's when the first Pan-African Congress was called. As a matter of fact, there was one meeting here in 1893 in Chicago. It's called the All-African Congress. That led to the first Pan-African Congress in 1900. And then there was what you call another Congress right here in Georgia at Clark Atlanta University Center by Bishop McNeil Turner and Reverend Edward Blyden. And part of it was to organize Africans to return home, to establish what? An African nationality. But then what happened in 1895, Emperor Menelik defeated the Italians. And then we begin to reorganize ourselves, shift the agenda to organize the first Pan-African Congress in 1900. Who gave us the support for that? Emperor Menelik. He wrote to us that this is the greatest thing to have. Emperor Menelik. And of course, Booker T. Washington said, this is the greatest thing that we can ever have. He and W.E.B. Du Bois, they were attacking each other. But when it came to Africa, they were what? Unified around the continent. Do you hear what I just said? That's a great model too. And Brother Kofi, I see that look. So brothers and sisters, this is what they call the African World Report. And so we have to use the best examples of our history to move forward. What happened after that is Marcus Garvey came on the scene. But that's after when W.E.B. Du Bois came out of the Pan-African Conference and said, the problem of the 20th century will be the color line. That came out of the first Pan-African Congress. It was a statement from the whole Congress. And the plan was now every African should go back to the Caribbean, go back to the homeland in the U.S. and begin to organize. That's how the NAACP started. Do you hear what I just said? The NAACP and the modern civil rights movement came from the Pan-African movement. And then Garvey took it to another level. Not only for civil rights, but for African power all over the world. And of course, when Kwame Nkrumah came along, took it even to another level. Gaddafi tried recently to maintain that momentum, but the enemies put in some guy called, what's his name? Obama, basically the forces that are arrayed against us have studied us so much that they can use our own people against us. Let me say this now. Africa was ready. By 2000, we were poised to build a United States of Africa. We were poised to do that. But the enemy said this will not be done because by 2007, you had what you call a Great Recession. And remember what Dr. Clark said. If Africa is unified and strong, Europe will in many ways return to its dark ages. Do you hear what I just said? Europe will degenerate into the dark ages when Africa becomes strong. And this is exactly what was going on with the Great Recession. Europe was regressing into what you call the Great Recession. They were going back into the dark ages. And then they decided that they must crush Africa, recolonize Africa, and this is where we are right now. So my dear sister, the African World Report. There she is, the great queen.
Well, thank you all very much, and I got a whole bunch of thank yous to say.
That's Cynthia Kenny.
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
dying for her right now.
Well, thank you for the sentiment, but I would never ask you to die. I want you to live. I want you to
We
live.
got to deal with Africa for the African home and abroad, and what is that? The BAC, not the A. BAC, what is it? One feather, one bullet? You know, we don't need no Nelson Mandela foolishness. Black power. Let me shut up.
Okay. I had a despite the rain all day yesterday, we had a very successful coat and blanket drive. And the thing that's so important is that I invited every media outlet in the city of Atlanta to cover what we were doing. No one covered it except for our social media, and WRFG pumped it like crazy. And so I'm inside with the men, and sadly, one of the women's shelters started turning down women, and so there were women and children upstairs in the office space. So that's a whole nother problem. But I'm downstairs and we're singing Christmas carols and everything, and, you know, trying to be uplifting, and we were actually, and then the men decided that they wanted to come and sing and recite poetry, and so it was marvelous. But I really wasn't sure that we collected coats and blankets. So I went back to the receiving area and it was completely full. People had been dropping off coats and blankets in the rain. They came and they brought and they participated and they gave. So successful. And there was new things that were brought as well. So I just want to say thank you to WRFG. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to all of you, because you're conscious and not among the walking dead, or because I'm working on my PhD and my topic is Hugo Chavez. I've had the opportunity to visit, because for me, some of his literature is new, and to revisit Paulo Freire, the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Frantz Fanon, Black Skin. I'm really getting into this whole new part of the world that Latin America, not that I didn't pay attention to, but I'm getting into it in a whole new, deep kind of way. And if you can imagine Pan-Africanism in Spanish, that's what I'm experiencing. And Pan-Africanism in Spanish is alive and well.
Come on now.
Also, I need to say that I need to thank WADU, because WADU is going to play a very important role in helping me with my interviews and with the, how can I say, the structure of my dissertation when I get to that point. I'm just writing my proposal at this point. But I want to lift up African voices. So lots of people will be writing dissertations and books on the legacy of Hugo Chavez, but I want to look at his legacy through African eyes. Yes. And I think that's going to be a unique opportunity. Also, I need to say a word about Akbar. We traveled the country when we were fighting the U.S. decision, President Obama's decision to bomb Libya.
Bomb Africa.
And so you've got a panel here with Joe Beasley, and Joe Beasley pays a lot of attention to Brazil. Is that right? So, you know, the Portuguese-speaking world and black world. And it's amazing. I've been in Asia, and with the Asians, I've been with African people who were there from the very beginning. So we really are a global people.
The original people of the planet Earth. Y'all forgive me.
Thank you, and we do forgive you. And when David was talking about Haiti and Hispaniola, the island and the European immigration, this is the same thing that happened all over Latin America, is that there was European immigration that was almost a forced immigration so as to dilute and basically commit genocide against the indigenous people and the African peoples that were there. So this aspect of immigration, we met a young gentleman who's here from Baji, and it's black people, so that we understand that when the issue of immigration arises inside the United States as a policy matter, that it affects us too, and that we need to have our voices heard on the immigration issue. The thing that came to my mind when all of the discussion about Nelson Mandela was up was that we cannot afford to win on the battlefield and lose at the peace table. Mm-hmm. But that is basically what happened with the New South Africa. And it's really what we continue to experience. And one of the predecessors speaking talked about Clinton bombing Africa. Well, let us not forget that President Obama is bombing Africa literally as we speak, because Somalia is being bombed every day. My sister and our hostess spoke about the treatment of Ethiopians. Well, I saw the treatment of Ethiopians when I was in the Israeli prison. Mm-hmm. And I saw the video that's been posted as well about the treatment of Ethiopians by the Saudis. And this is an opportunity for us to come together, Africans in the diaspora, Africans in the United States, I don't know what we call ourselves, and the immigrant Africans who now live here. We have to find a way to work together, right? Because one of our other speakers talked about the guile of the enemy, and I want to mention that briefly. What I have learned in my sort of maneuverings at this point, and I'm trying to get documentation on it, was the idea that Hugo Chavez had and shared with Muammar Gaddafi. And this is also going to be something that won't be celebrated in high places, but it's something that we need to know about. And that is, Hugo Chavez was working on Latin American integration. Well, we know that Muammar Gaddafi was working on Latin American integration, on African integration, sorry. But what we know very little about is that the two of them were working on African South American integration. We've got a quote from John Wolfenson, the former president of the World Bank, who's talking about how he was able to maneuver in the world because in his back pocket he knew that those who were the colonizers had the majority control, 80% of the world's economy. And he talks about how the global structure, the global governing structure of today was set up by the colonizers. And so no matter where he went in the world, no matter what it was that he was to do, he knew that in his back pocket, he and his people control 80% of the global economy, and they also control the global structure. Now, what is about to change? What is about to change, and this was the message of warning that Wolfenson was giving to the young graduate students at Stanford Business School, was that this is no longer their world. Because of the rise of China and India and the alliance of the African states, no longer with Europe, but Africa allying itself with China and India, that is a new day. And it will be a brave new world. He said this, to use his quote, he said this is a change of tectonic monument. He said this is a tectonic shift. that is about to take place where young white kids can go throughout the world, but they will not have the global apartheid structure that exists today to support their dreams and aspirations. This is something that I think we need to understand. It really should never have been the other way, the way it is now. Because technically we're 84% of the world's population. So why is it that 16% of the global population control 84%? That's global. But then we don't even need to go on a global level. We can look right here at what's happening right here in the state of Georgia and see how the minority control the majority.
Right.
I wanted to mention something about if we are about power, what do we do with the power that we have? And I just want to mention, I don't want to talk long, but I want to mention three examples. One example was when I was in the Congress, and there was an entity called the Southern Africa Development Fund. And it needed to be funded. It didn't have any money. It was just a blank vehicle that could be used if it was lifted up and financed. So I worked with the Appropriations Committee to actually put some money into the Southern Africa Development Fund. And the idea was going to be that our former United Nations ambassador, Andy Young, would sit at the head of the Southern Africa Development Fund. And that was how we went through the entire process of funding and everything. And this would give Black people the opportunity to control some of our tax dollars and direct it effectively toward Southern African projects. Well, we went through the process, we got the money, Southern Africa Development Fund was set up, and then I got absorbed into my redistricting fight, and I didn't look at the Southern Africa Development Fund again until after I was able to come back to it after 1996, after I had won re-election and the redistricting battle was behind me. Lo and behold, what did I find? What I found was that Maurice Templesman had become the manager of the Southern Africa Development Fund. So something that was set up for us, by us, with our fair share of tax dollars, was handed over to another community to manage. And so their priorities became the priority projects that were financed by the Southern Africa Development Fund. It's just an example that when we have the power, we need to darn keep the power. Right. We don't need to give the power away. There was the matter of, this is a second Congress story, that we were trying to do something with Africa manufacturing on the continent. And we were trying to get the members of the Congressional Black Caucus to buy into, this was an idea actually that Earl Hilliard in Alabama had come up with, and that was each member of the Congressional Black Caucus take a region that was populated by Africans, and then we, in the normal course, come on Mukasa, in the normal course of our congressional business, we would also do something on behalf of African people in other places in the world. We had one member of the Congressional Black Caucus object to the idea and say, I represent South Carolina. I don't represent South Africa. And this is the kind of attitude that prevails, that if we're really serious about our issues, then we've got to take to task those people who would have us win on the battlefield, whether it's a military battlefield or it's a political battlefield in the form of an election, and then lose at the peace table. The other example that I want to give has direct bearing on United Nations Ambassador Bill Richardson to fly to Congo and participate in a meeting there. I don't think I've ever told this story to you guys anyway. And so we're sitting in the room, and this is before the famous march into Kinshasa. So Mobutu was still in power. And but the handwriting was on the wall, and it was just a matter of time before Mobutu was going to leave, and Laurent Kabila was going to take over all of Congo. And all of the deals that were going to be made needed to be worked out prior to. Here's another thing. When the so-called, what do they call it? The black unity, black progressive unity. There's a black organization of progressives that's supposed to be united. And the idea was that, you know, you can't put an agenda to candidate Obama because while he's campaigning is not the time to press a political agenda. You remember that? That's a bunch of bunk. That was an excuse to do the bidding of the Democratic Party, but anyway, at the expense of black people. But anyway, so the Americans were trying to cut the deal with Kabila so to set the agenda. And in this meeting, I'm in the meeting, and I have appointed somebody to go with me. She's in the meeting. She knows how to speak Swahili and everything. And Ambassador Swing, who was, in my opinion, a CIA ambassador, because he was in South Africa, he was in Haiti, and he was in all of the U.S. hotspots, and I know that doesn't happen accidentally. So anyway, we're all in this meeting, and they're trying to press Kabila to do this and do that and do this and do that. And Kabila said that he could not just consent to this. He had to consult with his cabinet. And they laughed and said, "You don't have to consult with your cabinet," you know, as if his cabinet was not as significant as President Clinton's cabinet, you know. And then all of a sudden in this room, Laurent Kabila started talking another language. It was not Swahili. It was not Lingala. It was something else. And all of the white people in the room were turning their heads and looking, and they, you know, what are they speaking? What are they speaking? Laurent Kabila had his cabinet meeting right there in the room, and nobody knew what he was talking about. In the end, he did not agree to the U.S. terms, and Bill Richardson asked the ambassador who was there, who was actually the husband of Valerie Plame, Joe Wilson, asked Joe Wilson to lie and say that Kabila did agree to the terms, and Joe Wilson showed integrity and refused to lie. But I told that story because I want to mention the special knowledge that we have. We have a special knowledge. That's why when I told my son, no matter wherever you go in the world on this planet, if you see another black person, you look them in the eye and you speak to them and you say hello, because we are a kind of intimate. This is what I wrote in my paper about why I wanted to write about Hugo Chavez, because he understood racism and oppression. And that's the kind of knowledge that we have, and we all share that knowledge, and we don't need to take that for granted. We need to celebrate the things that we have in common and a special kind of knowledge that we have. The last thing I want to mention is something that's right here, a local issue, and it pertains to the guile of the enemy. The city of Clarkston has a huge Somali population. And we worked very hard when I was in the Congress to get, we supported several candidates who wanted to be the mayor of the city of Clarkston so that the city of Clarkston could enjoy leadership that was more sensitive than the leadership that it had. And finally, we were able to get a black man to serve as the mayor of Clarkston. And unfortunately, what happened is that the Somali community was approached, and this is not the first time, because the Somali community was approached when I was running for re-election, and they were up there standing, holding signs for Leanne Levitan. So the Somali community was approached and decided that they would run a candidate for mayor. That divided the black vote. And so now we have neither a Somali nor an African American as mayor of the city of Clarkston. So we have to not ever win on the battlefield and then lose at the peace table. We cannot afford to give away the little power that we do have. We can't afford to ever give it away. And we always have to remain vigilant, because the other side is, they never sleep. The guile of the enemy is appropriate for us to always remember. So with that, I say thank you.
Yeah. Keep going. Sink it. Oh, gotcha, no problem.
So the whole global African world. He's a Patrice Lumumba man. He loves Patrice Lumumba.
So do I.
That's right, that's right. And of course, I remember when I was a university student, my professor was an economist and advisor. He said when a plane flies too low in the Congo, every single needle begins to shake because of the gravitational pull of the ore on these small planes. I mean, this is so powerful. I mean, the amount of resources is like a gravity itself. It's like one of those, in itself, it's like one of those major planets out there in the cosmos. And of course, again, it can affect even a plane that is traveling through the Congo. This is the wealth and the power of the Congo. Brother Carney, thank you so much. Our friends of the Congo.
Thank you, Brother Menelik. How's everyone doing?
Great.
All right, great. It's a pleasure. It's truly a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Maurice Carney, and I am one of the co-founders of Friends of the Congo and its executive director. Really want to thank you for having us. It's a great opportunity to be here with Minister Akbar Mohammed. It's truly humbling to be on the panel with him. I was with him yesterday in Alabama, learned a tremendous amount just from a short presentation that he gave. Brother Joe Beasley, longtime laborer in the African world, and with Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's a pleasure to be here with you as well. And everybody know Brother Mukasa. Everybody just give a black power for the brother. All right.
Long live Africa.
That's right. So thank you very much, and certainly want to thank the support network of Friends of Congo here, Brother Kwame, Brother Sebukwe, and the rest of the others, and Sister Justine, who is here with us. I'm gonna be brief. We've been talking about the continent, and my charge is to talk about the heart of the continent, which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, former Zaire, which is literally and figuratively the heart of Africa. The heart of Africa. Now, when I say the heart, you can really liken the African continent to a body. And if you know about the functioning of a body, if the heart is under attack or arrest, the body cannot function. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, the heart of Africa has been under attack. Raise your hands if you know or if you've heard that millions of lives have been lost in the Congo since 1996. Raise them high. The United Nations says it's the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. The greatest humanitarian crisis at the dawn of the 21st century, where at least 6 million black people, Africans, have lost their lives from 1996 to 2007. Imagine if 6 million white people lost their lives anywhere on this planet. What would the outcry be?
It'd be good for us.
Wouldn't the whole world know about it?
That's right.
Wouldn't you be mobilized to want to bring an end to it?
Sure.
Unfortunately, as it relates to the Congo, there's been a great silence. Why? Several reasons why. Black lives are not as valued as other lives. We see a devaluing of black life in the heart of Africa.
Yeah, well.
So millions of Africans can die, and it would be just like a tree falling in a forest. So what Friends of Congo is doing is joining in solidarity with the Congolese to build a solidarity movement that we argue is as important today as the Free South Africa movement was yesterday.
That's right.
Why do we say this? If you look at the Congo itself, just briefly, indulge me. When the European powers established their spheres of influence on the African continent, the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, Congo was central to that enterprise. The Berlin Conference was also referred to as the Congo Conference. And at the Berlin Conference, one of the biggest point of discussion was what was going to happen with the Congo. And as a compromise, as a form of preventing European powers from going to war to control that great prize, they made it a free trade zone where European powers could have their way throughout the Congo. So they called it the Congo Free State. And unlike other African nations, Congo was not colonized at the Berlin Conference. It was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property. I'm going to say that again. It was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property.
That's right.
That means he owned it outright. And within a 23-year period, he extracted rubber and ivory, valued in today's dollar figures at over $1 billion. And the Congolese people had to pay a dear price for that. Within that 23-year period, they lost half of their population. An estimated 10 to 15 million people lost their lives as the king exploited the Congo. Now, there was a global movement that rose up to take the Congo from the king. You had figures like George Washington Williams. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's the one who coined the term crimes against humanity. John Hope Franklin wrote a biography on him, the biography of George Washington Williams. Fought here in the United States in the Civil War. Came out of the Civil War as elected official in Ohio. But he saw fit to take up the Congo cause. He was not the only one. You had William Shepard, a Presbyterian minister, who went on a mission in the Congo, lived with the Luba people, learned their languages, translated into English, documented the atrocities that were taking place, passed information on to figures like Mark Twain, who wrote King Leopold's Soliloquy. Other figures like Sir Conan Arthur Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes. Booker T. Washington from right down in the South. He also wrote on the Congo, on the crime in the Congo. W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yes.
So we had major figures that were raising their voices at the time in defense of the Congolese people. And they were successful, to the point that success was defined, and that is taking the Congo away from the king. But it wasn't given back to the Congolese people. It was then turned over to the Belgian state in 1908 to rule as a colonial outpost, where they continued the extraction process. From 1908 to 1960, Belgium ruled Congo as a colonial outpost where they extracted gold and diamonds, copper and cobalt, and most notably, uranium. The uranium that the United States used, the Manhattan Project, to build its atomic weapons that ultimately was dropped on Japan, came out of the Congo.
That's right.
So you see, we have a history of Congo serving the West for its purposes, while the Congolese people live in abject poverty, in slavery, forced labor. But it's important to note that Congolese had been resisting throughout this period. One of the most notable figures was a gentleman by the name of Simon Kimbangu. Simon Kimbangu resisted Belgian colonialism. And as a result of his resistance, he was imprisoned for sedition. And he was in prison longer than Nelson Mandela. From 1921 to 51, 30 years for resisting Belgian colonialism. So Congolese people were not just sitting and lying back, but they were fighting the oppression, fighting the domination. And finally in 1960, they were able to determine their own affairs and elect Prime Minister Patrice Emery Lumumba in May of 1960. He was inaugurated, that's right, Patrice Emery Lumumba. He was inaugurated on June 30th. And if you remember Lumumba's speech, he said he wanted all that wealth of Congo to be utilized for the benefit of Congolese in particular and for Africans in general. And that sent shudders through the West. So within weeks, he was deposed by the CIA, led by Larry Devlin, the chief of station. There's a book that he wrote called Chief of Station Congo. And Devlin said something that sticks to me to this day, and it's critical for each and every one of us to understand. He said, we overthrew this democratically elected government of Patrice Lumumba because we felt that if we lost Congo, we would lose all of Africa. Congo was the first country, post-independence country, that the United States intervened in in under the principle what they call the Congo Syndrome. That's the idea that they'll go into Africa and establish governments that are friendly to U.S. policies. And those that are not friendly to U.S. policies, they'll overthrow them. So, within weeks, Lumumba was overthrown and then assassinated. And the U.S. didn't stop there, but what they did, they imposed a dictator over the Congolese people for over 3 decades, in Joseph Desiré Mobutu, who bled the country dry and provided access to U.S. corporations and U.S. interests. When the Congolese people continued their struggle in an attempt to control and determine their affairs, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, a pro-democracy movement grew up, a non-violent pro-democracy movement. Instead of the United States supporting this movement, what it did was to support an invasion of the Congo. But they still wanted to control the affairs of the Congo. So they reached out to their allies, or proxies, in Rwanda and Uganda, who invaded Congo in 1996, invaded Congo again in 1998, and that triggered what the United Nations says is the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II, where an estimated 6 million Congolese have lost their lives. There was a peace process that took place, and the Congolese elected Joseph Kabila as their new president in 2006. The Rwandans and Ugandans had removed their troops, but they still kept proxy militia inside of the country. And some of you may have heard in the news that of late, the proxy militia called the M23 just defeated in the Congo. Those proxy militias were backed by Rwanda and Uganda for a 17-year period. And just this November, finally, for the first time in 17 years, the Congolese defeated a militia group that was backed by Rwanda and Uganda. So there's some prospects for peace. It's important to understand why this group was defeated. Of course, the Congolese military reorganized itself. African troops came to their side under UN leadership. What they established was what they call a Force Intervention Brigade. About 3,000 South Africans, Tanzanians, and Malawians went to the side of the Congolese to fight these militia. But the most important, the most critical reason why the militia group was defeated was because of a phone call that President Kagame got from the United States and the United Kingdom. The Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, William Hague, called President Kagame of Rwanda. Secretary of State John Kerry called President Kagame and shared with them, we do not want you to continue to back the militia group inside of the Congo. The militia groups in the Congo, Rwanda and Uganda, have been able to get away with what they've gotten away with because the United States has protected them.
That's right.
They're U.S. allies. In fact, President Obama, when he was a senator, passed a law calling for the United States to stop financing and arming Rwanda and Uganda. In 2006, he passed a law. But when he became president, he didn't implement the law. He didn't do anything about it. And there was a global uprising, let's say, a movement that put pressure on the administration for it to change its policy in the region. And then in 2012, it started changing its policy and finally withheld some aid from Rwanda. It did it again in 2013. And this was decisive in bringing an end to the militia group that was backed by Rwanda and Uganda in the Congo. So our government, the United States government, has been implicated in the instability in the region, in the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. And that is why this solidarity movement is so important that we're building. That's why we're here today. Because we have it within our powers to affect what the US government does, and that would in turn affect lives in the heart of Africa. Why does all this matter? Why would you want to be engaged? Why would you want to petition the US government to change its policy? Because Congo is vital to the future of the African continent. I'm going to share with you why. I already stated it's in the heart of Africa. It's bordered by 9 other African countries. It's the size of Western Europe. An estimated population of 70 million people. One of the largest countries in the world. And it's endowed with tremendous wealth. Business Week said that there's an estimated $24 trillion worth of natural resources in the Congo. Let me say that again. They've reported that there's an estimated $24 trillion worth of natural resources. Give you a sense of what that is. That's about the gross national product of both the United States and the European Union combined.
Wow.
If you take a look at the Congo River itself, it stretches from the east of the country and dumps out into the Atlantic. If that river is properly dammed, it can provide electricity for the entire African continent. Some left $1 investment by a company named Freeport McMoran, based in New Orleans and Phoenix, Arizona. WikiLeaks reported, and Financial Times of London picked it up, said that Congo, the mine that Freeport McMoran has in Congo, is one of the top 20 protected terrorist sites in the world by the United States. So, natural resources, the river. Congo straddles the equator, has 4 growing seasons. You drop a seed and it grows. It has the agricultural capacity to feed the entire world. So do we need to send food to Africa? Right? So it has oil on the Atlantic, oil on the interior. But you know the most precious resource is its people. Half of the population 18 and under. And the youth inside of the Congo are mobilizing and organizing to control and determine the affairs of the Congo. And they're reaching out to each and every one of us to join them in solidarity. Because they're not only fighting against their own corrupt elites, but they're fighting against foreign governments, the United States, France, Great Britain, neighboring countries, Rwanda, Uganda. They're fighting against multilateral institutions such as the World Bank and IMF. The World Bank wrote their mining laws. The mining laws for the Congo that determines how Congo is going to manage its resources was written in Washington, D.C. The World Bank wrote its forestry laws. Congo is a part of the 2nd largest rainforest in the world. Vital to fight against climate change. But the affairs of its forest, the affairs of its resources, are written by multilateral institutions. You have international NGOs that are in the Congo, and they'll share with you that they're working to bring about peace in the Congo. But what happens is you have millions of dollars going in through the front door for humanitarian aid, while you have billions going out the back door into corporate coffers of Congo's minerals. So, the youth inside the country are organizing, mobilizing to bring about change. They're fighting their local elites, and they're calling on us to challenge those institutions that I just shared with you. The World Bank, the IMF, U.S. foreign policy. And that's why we're here to speak with you, to have you join us in solidarity with the Congolese youth. Because what is at stake is not only Congo, but the entire African continent. The former South African President Thabo Mbeki said, there is no new Africa without a new Congo. Frantz Fanon said the continent is shaped like a gun. The trigger is a Congo. You pull it, sets off a combustion that ignites the entire continent. Even President Obama, who's not a Pan-Africanist, but he recognized the importance of the Congo, he said that if Africa is to achieve its promise, resolving the problem in the Congo will be critical. So that's why Congo matters. Che Guevara, when he went there in 1965, he said that the Congo problem is not just a Congolese problem, but it's a world problem. And he said that victory or defeat will be consequential continent-wide. So Congo is the fulcrum in which the African continent swings. It's vital to the future of the African continent. So if we're concerned about Africa, we must be concerned about the Congo and what happens there. That's why I'm so thankful to Wadu for providing us with this platform to share with you what has transpired, the work that the youth are doing on the ground, and how it is that each and every one of